All right, everybody. Welcome to the Never True podcast. We have a special guest, Mr. Greg Ludley. We're going to be talking about some topics dealing with, law enforcement and other things. Stay tuned.
Do me a favor and
like, comment, subscribe
on this video.
Have a nice day.
All right.
That was nice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome,
Good morning.
Greg. Welcome. So glad you're here.
I'm honored. I'm glad to be here
Great.
on a beautiful Saturday morning.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, first I'm going to welcome you, Greg, and now I'm going to introduce you from the bio that you sent me, and I tried to get out the most important things. It was like you said, it was a lot, but it was.
Oh God! It
so
just only means it only means I'm old. That's all.
Okay, first of all, Greg is a resident of Grambling, Louisiana. He's a graduate of Grambling State University and Grand Canyon University. Currently pursuing his doctorate of education and organizational leadership from Grand Canyon University. He is a 30-year veteran of law enforcement, and right now he's semi-retired. Currently employed by the town of Ringo, Louisiana, as a felony crimes investigator and a Grambling State University campus navigator for the Louisiana Department of Veteran Affairs. Just a few of his accomplishments, because he has accomplished a lot. Worked directly with the United States Secret Service when the then President Bill Clinton was the commencement speaker at Grambling State University. Personal bodyguard for Martin Luther King III and Reverend Jesse Jackson when they visited Grambling State University. Also a member of the Anti-Terrorism Task Force for the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And this I had to add because of Kevin, my husband. He's also a member of Omega Psi Phi Fraternity Incorporated.
Right.
Kevin said, make sure you add that on there. So I said, okay, all right. And so much more. He's accomplished so much more. So Greg, once again, thank you so much for being here today.
I am absolutely honored that you all would invite me, and I hope that I can add something to the platform.
All right.
Right.
So my first question, Greg, is what inspired you to go into law enforcement, and what does law enforcement means to you?
Actually, my journey into law enforcement is really a little bit unconventional. It's sort of a funny story. When I got out of the service in 1983, I kind of bounced around. A lot of times when you get out of the service, it's hard to find jobs. And I ended up in Greensboro, North Carolina. This was in, I think, October of '83. And I thought I wanted to be a teacher. So I enrolled in A&T in their teacher education program. Well, life has its funny turns and has its way of guiding you where you need to go. Right. And I met a fraternity brother there who was one of the captains in the police department. He asked me, "Hey man, do you want a job?" And I'm like, "Sure. What kind of job are you talking about?" And he said, "In the police department." At first, I was like, "No," but as life would have it, it sparked an interest. I started as a security guard in the residence halls, and things just progressed. And I ended up becoming a police officer, and I think I was on the force about 4 months, and I got promoted to corporal, and and the story goes on and on. It actually got me started in campus crime prevention, and it was something that I migrated over to Grambling when I came here to Grambling in '92. So that's how I got started.
All right.
And the second part of your question, what does it mean to me? Law enforcement means a lot of things to me. I found my niche there because, everybody has a purpose. And I found that was a way for me to positively impact the community that I served.
Okay.
One of the things that I see that happens quite a bit now, most police departments are not diverse enough to serve the communities that they interact with. In other words, you have more Caucasian officers patrolling black neighborhoods,
Right.
and sometimes that becomes a problem. Not all the time, but a lot of time it does become a problem. And when I first started in law enforcement, I had a very good chief, Chief J.O. Williams in North Carolina A&T, and he actually told us all as we were coming along, I'm teaching you and training you to take my job one day.
Okay.
That doesn't happen a lot
That's
in law
it.
enforcement. It's, law enforcement ends up being competitive, sometimes a little of this, a little of that. When I say the office politics, and when I came to Grambling and I went to the police academy here, one of the things that stuck out to me is the police academy standards is called POST, and it's an acronym for Peace Officers Standards and Training. Where in 92, when I became a police officer, all I knew about is being a peace officer,
Okay.
keeping the peace.
Yeah.
Right.
So we did more dialogue than they do now. And
Yeah.
I guess we'll get into that a little bit later in the podcast, but that's where the culture kind of left a little bit there.
Okay. So how has it been, and how does it feel right now being a Black police officer?
Well, I have some stories I could tell. We would be here until 2030. However, as a Black police officer, you have to, one, know who your friends are. That's essential for your longevity in this profession. One thing I learned the hard way is you can't fight, or you can't come to every battle with your boxing gloves on, because you're going to have some.
Yeah.
I was one of those. I couldn't keep my mouth closed. If you told me the sky was green and I looked outside and saw it was blue, I was like, wait a minute, no, the sky is blue, it's not green.
Yeah.
So I stayed in trouble a lot because of my mouth. But but it came from my mom. My mom told me, boy, don't you ever don't take any wood nickels. So I'm always, speaking out. And that's why I really appreciate y'all having me on this. I hope I don't get myself into trouble when I start.
We're not going to set you up. We're not going to set you up. I promise. We're not going to do that. Dude.
As I progressed in my profession, I actually experienced racism indirectly, and the reason I say that because there were times when I actually didn't recognize it as racism. And case in point, I came to Grambling in '92 and worked very hard here. And 2002, I got my master's in criminal justice here at Grambling. And when I got my master's, I was really looking forward to, some upward mobility.
Yeah.
And it didn't come as quickly as I thought it should. And I applied to the sheriff's office. But let me back that up. I applied to the sheriff's office about 4 times, but it wasn't until I got my master's degree that I was even considered for employment.
Yeah.
Now, I got hired on in October of 2004. And as I looked around the room demographically, it was probably 5 of us. When I say 5, it was 5 Blacks.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, the educational level in the room was high school graduate.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I had to be a master's graduate to be even considered. So that was one of my issues when I really found out, I couldn't get this job because of my skill set. I had to have many more things that made me shine above and beyond the rest.
Yeah.
And that's that institutional racism that,
Right.
comes kind of sticks its ugly head out sometimes.
Right.
So, and you can see in the background, you can tell I'm a fighter.
Yeah.
I've been NAACP for so
Yeah.
All right.
And I think probably that's the case in a lot of places, especially in the South. The black
it
police
is.
officers, that's why a lot of them aren't black police officers, because they have to have so much more than the other ones. So I think that's probably the problem too.
It is
Yeah.
part of the problem. And you got I call it the friends and family plan. Just because grandpa was a police officer and great grandpa was a police officer and daddy was a police officer, that doesn't make me a police officer. That
That's
doesn't make me a good. That doesn't make me a good police officer.
right.
So sometimes that's why I say the office politics a lot of times comes into play in larger departments and especially in sheriff's offices because they're elected officials. So
Right.
they have to cater to that
Donors.
public out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when big politics come into play.
yeah, and money and power is a mighty thing.
Yes, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't have very much of it.
Yeah. In the news, I'm quite sure, you've been seeing, there's been a lot of confrontation or a lot of stuff going on in the news or whatever. Can you give me an example or some examples of a confrontation that you've encountered and how you handled it as a black police officer?
I can approach that from two different perspectives. As a police officer on duty, I have, as I said before, I was trained to be a peace officer. So it kind of brings me back, and I hate to bounce around. It kind of brings me back to a post I saw on Facebook not too long ago when it said, "Why aren't there very many black police officers shooting unarmed people as they are white police officers if we had the same training?"
Right.
Yeah.
And that, just opened up a whole different ball of wax for me because throughout my whole 30 years of law enforcement, I've never had to take a life. Now,
Amen.
that doesn't mean that my weapon has not been drawn. But as my training taught me as a peace officer, I was supposed to use this and this more
Right.
so than I was what was around my waist.
Okay.
And somewhere in the late 2000s, something changed. I don't know what it was. Well, let me be honest. I do know what it is. It's cultural.
Yeah.
Um, we have, from generation to generation, brought along some ugly baggage. Even history of the police department, as I was doing my research on my dissertation, has an ugly past.
Mhm.
One of the first organized police departments in the United States was slave patrol.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's right.
Now, their function then and our function now is pretty much the same. Um, police departments are supposed to preserve and protect life and property.
Right.
Okay. But the wrinkle with that in the 1860s, 1850s, we were the property.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so what happened was they were put in places to keep us in line. They were the disciplinarians. If we ran away, they were the people who were supposed to go capture us and bring us back to the slave owners. Now, most of these slave patrol people were bankers, lawyers, businessmen, and the like.
Mm-hmm.
And as far as that ugly evolution, the slave patrols ultimately evolved into the Ku Klux Klan.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
And as a result, a culture that came from way back in slavery. Because if you look at the Constitution, we were never meant to be full citizens. I think we are still written in the Constitution as three-fifths.
That's right.
3/5 of a person.
Yeah.
That's still in the Constitution. And you don't hear any politician anywhere saying that we need to take that out because they don't want to take it out.
Yeah.
And like I said, I don't want to go too long on that, but
you're good.
One of the reasons why things are happening the way they are is because there has not been a culture change. And what I mean by that, you hear the European colonizers, as I call them, not wanting to let go of the rebel flag, for instance. It's not the flag that they don't want to get rid of. It's the culture and what that flag represents.
Right.
That flag is a symbol of oppression. That flag is a symbol of power. And just yesterday, a young lady sent me a link and it just blew me away because the laws on the books have not been written to favor our kind.
Right.
Not just in law enforcement, but civilly as well.
Yeah.
There are laws on some of the southern states' books right now that air property, some of the things that some of our families have grown to acquire over the many years is in jeopardy because it's still air property and it's not clear title yet.
Wow.
What?
There's a family in Lisbon, Louisiana, which is not very far from where I am right now. I'm not going to call their name, but they lost 550 acres because of this law. This law states that let's say a timber person can go find one of your descendants or one of your family members, let's say in California, New York, someone who's not going to ever come back to Louisiana and could care less about the air property that you have down here in the South.
Okay.
That businessman can proposition them and buy them out. And then the laws on the book states that they can force a sale of the rest of the property, which means that if you have, like my family, we got almost 200 acres north of the interstate. And that scared me to death when I saw that because, what if we have someone that does that to us and then we get into a public bid and they have more money than we do and they outbid us? We have to leave our own property. And that's how that law is written. Many timber companies in the South have done that to many Black families. So when we start talking about systematic racism, it does not just exist in the police department. It exists all across the board.
That's right.
I was shocked when I found out that Hilton Head, South Carolina, used to be owned by slaves, and they were bought out and shipped out under this same law. This law has been on the books since slavery time. So here's things that we have to, as Black Americans, step up and talk about and make sure that our other people know about these things. Because, if they can acquire your land that easy, what else can they do?
That's right.
What else can they do?
And that's why I say, as a people, we need to be able to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time.
Absolutely.
Like all of our attention does not need to be on what's going on with law enforcement, because, like I said, there are other things that we have to deal with. And to my opinion, I feel like right now, racism is a tool more so because for them to use to take our attention somewhere so they can do other things.
Absolutely.
Like what they're doing with the Georgia voting bill, voting act, things like that. But we're so focused on the Derek Chauvin trial and, now Ma'Khia Bryan and all these other people who have lost their lives that we're not really paying attention to everything. And I think we need to be able to walk and chew bubble gum at the same time and not our attention so easily swayed so we can pay attention to a lot of these other things that's going on in the background.
Absolutely. I find that a lot of times we as a people, and I use this term sometimes, we fall asleep at the wheel. You know, we got so happy when President Obama got elected into office, and we was just so happy, we was jumping up and down, but we fell asleep at the wheel. We forgot to go vote on judges. We forgot to go vote in our local elections. We forgot to vote at midterm. And what happened was Obama operated for 8 years with his hands tied behind his back because he's just one person. Now, a lot of times people want to fault, well, Obama didn't do very much for us. We didn't do very much for him.
We just had those first 2 years, and after that, it was a wrap.
It was a wrap. I mean, and the same thing is happening right now, believe it or not. Like you said, we're focused on these police killings, which we should be. Right. But as you said before, we need to walk and chew gum at the same time, because these voting rights acts of the Voting Rights Act of 1865 is under attack daily. Daily. Yeah. In Louisiana, in Georgia, all of the southern states, they're trying to make it hard for us to vote. It's not because of voter fraud. It's because we came out and voted in numbers, and they had never seen that before. Right. And now they're fearful of losing control. This whole thing is about control.
Control. That's it.
You know, even I applaud President Biden somewhat about some of the things that he's trying to do, but he got a tough row to hoe, because all of these people are not going to get on board when you start talking about separation of diversifying wealth, when you're trying to do more for underprivileged groups of people.
That's right.
Because there's only one pie, and right now we have about a 16th of a third of that pie, and they got the rest of it. And they're not planning on sharing.
Right.
And honestly, I hope I can see some change, some real change, before the Lord calls me home. But we're still spinning our wheels. We are not doing half of what we should be doing. And I know we're kind of getting off the track as far as what the theme was.
But it ties in. It ties in.
It all ties in, because you know, I was really disappointed in President Biden when he said the other day that America is not a racist country.
Right.
He tried to categorize it by saying, well, for 400 years, people have been left behind the 8 ball, but it's because of racism.
Right. That's the foundation. Racism.
Our Constitution is racist.
Right.
It's absolutely. We already said it.
That's it.
The national anthem. The national anthem is racist.
Right.
You know, and you have football owners that want to penalize our brothers for not wanting to stand for a song that says we are better off dead. That's what it's basically saying. You know, we as slaves, we are better off dead.
Yeah.
We are a commodity. So, and with Colin Kaepernick, he can't get a uniform nowhere in the NFL, but Tim Tebow can interview for almost any team in the NFL. It's something wrong with that picture, you know.
Yeah.
I remember trying to go back to where I was going with my original answer about experiencing racism. As a police officer, it's kind of funny because this is some habit I've been having since my daddy had me up in his lap driving a car at 7 years old. I drive fast.
Okay.
I have a heavy foot. I admit that I have a heavy foot, so I get stopped a lot. I remember it was in 2016. I was coming from my last job that I just retired from in Monroe, and I got stopped by the local police department. I don't want to put nobody on blast. I should, but I won't. Stopped me from speeding. I was in uniform now.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
He asked me to get out of the vehicle. Now we're on the side of I-20. We both, to me, this is when I think about images. The fact that both of us standing out there on the side of the interstate, both of us dressed in blue, both
Yeah.
of us armed. Why are we having this conversation?
Right.
For the most part, there's a unwritten rule of professional courtesy. If you stop another police officer, unless he's being a butthole now,
Right.
normally they let you go. This guy, youngster, probably fresh out of the academy, and we're gonna get to that in a minute because I got to talk about that too, about selection. When it comes to people who should and should not be police officers.
Yeah.
Anyway, getting back to the scenario, he stops me. Of course, I always give whoever is in charge their due respect. I say, sir, I'm sorry. I apologize. I'm just getting off work. I know I was speeding. He says, well, did you know that your tags were expired? I said, no, I just got my sticker in the mail, just hadn't put it on. So he says to me, well, if you put it on right now, I won't give you a ticket.
Ooh.
Now, I told you, my mama told me, don't never take no wooden nickels. So I'm I got a little warm because, number one, we're out here on the side of the interstate. It's trucks whizzing by. Every time a truck whizzes by, it kind of blows us around.
Yeah.
You want me to take this paper sticker and stick it on the back of my license plate, and we're about, let's say, 6 miles from Walmart, where I could have done it safely in the parking lot, if it was that important to you.
Right.
But it was a power play
Mm-hmm.
because he had the power at the time,
Right.
But see, he didn't know who he was dealing with. He talking about somebody that's been a detective for almost 15 years, been in law enforcement twice that amount of time.
Yeah.
You can't just tell me anything. I know the law backwards and forward. I know the law in my sleep. So first of all, you had no right to tell me to do anything out there on that side of the road, which was going to hazard you or me, because the truck could lose control and take us both out. So if it was that important enough for you to want me to put this sticker to show that my license is not expired, which it wasn't, I showed it to him. We could go up the street, we could get off the road, we could do a lot of different things, but you want me to do it right then. So that told me right then, oh, okay, you flexing on me,
Yeah.
So anyway, I told her, I said, man, look, my license plate is dirty, man. It just rained yesterday. So he took it out of my hand and slapped it on the back of the license plate. Like, okay. So I was like, okay, now I said, well, if it falls off, man, because of the dirt, that's on you, bro. But what I did was, he didn't know I knew his boss. I knew his shift lieutenant. All these guys I have been shoulder to shoulder with serving high risk warrants and all. He didn't know I knew these people. All he saw was this, a black man.
Yeah.
It didn't matter that I was in uniform. He wanted to show out. So all I did, I went up there. I left straight from where I was, went straight to the police department, called out as a supervisor. I said, I need to holler at you, brother. He said, man, one of your youngsters just handled me really bad. They apologized, but I bet you wouldn't do that. He won't do that again.
Right.
He won't do that again. And another instance happened at one of our sister universities. I was on my way home this particular time. Now this time I wasn't speeding. I wasn't doing anything wrong, except I have dark windows in my car, which I'm authorized to do because I'm in law enforcement. This guy made a U-turn and followed behind me, pulled me over, and said that my windows were a little dark. And I said, well, yeah, man, I know I do the same work that you do. Showed him my badge and my ID. He said, I said, no problem. I said, because number one, I don't want anybody to break in my vehicle because I got an M16 on the seat, you know, and about 300 rounds of ammunition. So anyway, he said, "Well, okay, no problem." He said, "But do you mind if I check to see how dark they are to win?" I said, "Man, don't you put your hand on my car? You know, I'd have just told you that we're in the same line of work. Why you want to check to see how dark they are? You know, quit playing."
Yeah.
But these are some of the things that I have experienced, and these are two that I was in uniform.
Man.
You know,
Crazy.
so there's no respect, and part of it is because there's a fear.
Mm-hmm.
There's a fear. Now, if you don't believe visual images play an important part on your well-being, your mental state, and how you treat other people, even how you treat yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you're delusional.
Yeah.
Those images that were portrayed to us in the 50s and the 60s were meant to rise up one race of people and put down another. And I can just go from TV show to TV show. I mean, the Little Rascals, what they used to do, always do to Buckwheat. You know, he was always the butt of all the jokes. You know, Charles Schultz, Peanuts.
Peanuts.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody would be sitting on this side of the table, and I forgot the black kid. They'd have him sitting over here by himself.
Right.
Yeah.
Little things.
And the list goes on and on and on and on. And what this does is it creates a superiority on one end and an inferiority on the other end. And it's designed to do that. I had an experience about 3 months ago. A friend of mine lives in Ruston, and in a blended neighborhood, more or less. And but it's more of them than it is of us. And I was visiting, and it was this little girl. She was probably about 5 or 6 years old, and she was riding her skateboard down the street. It's a cul-de-sac, so very little traffic. So I come through, and I turn into my friend's driveway, which ended up separating the little girl from her line of sight of her mother.
Mm-hmm.
She had a fit. She went into conniptions. I mean, you could see the fear on her face. It was like, oh my God. She thought she was about to be eaten up by the boogeyman. I mean, you could see it. One thing law enforcement, especially investigations, has taught me is how to read body language. She was in so much fear that, you know, I feel bad for her, you know. And as soon as she was able to go around my truck and get back to her mother, and her mother consoled her. Now, 2 or 3 days later, I came down that same road, and the little girl was like, "Hey, hey," waving.
Yeah.
But it was simply because her mother had told her after that episode, "You don't have to fear him. He you know, he doesn't live in the neighborhood, but he's visiting somebody." But can you imagine? Generally,
Yeah.
I was a threat.
Yeah.
And what happens generationally, and this is where I want to really go about how police departments need to do a better job of selection. Every generation is built from a different fabric.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll use myself as an example. Now, I run a small landscaping business, 1 or 2 man operation. And as of last year, I started trying to transition out of that because my daddy started doing it before, and I inherited his equipment, but I wasn't made like my daddy. My dad just stay out there in the heat from sun up to sundown and further on into the night. Me, after 3 hours, I'm beat. You know, I can't do it no more. And I say that to say this: as time has gone on, the generation after that, of the generation, we lose a little something. we don't have the same fabric that our ancestors had.
Right.
And something else that happens, as some of us become successful, we try to make the path a little brighter and a little less, what's the word I'm looking for, a little less taxing for the children that come behind us.
Right.
But there's a double-edged sword there, because what happens is, I don't have any children, but I got a bunch of nieces and nephews, and that generation is this right now generation. They
Yeah.
want it right now. They don't have any patience. They don't have they don't know anything about waiting. Now, let's transition that over to law enforcement. As I stated before, being a peace officer rather,
Mhm.
my job was to, however long it takes to de-escalate a situation, you
Right.
talk that person down.
Right.
We were taught something they call the escalation of force. It's 5 steps. It's called the right on the tip of my tongue. But for the sake of argument, it's called escalation of force. It's 5 steps. It's officer presence, verbal command, hands on, chemical spray or baton, deadly force.
Mhm.
Those are the 5 steps that we were taught that you must go through before you get to deadly force.
Yeah.
Now, remember I said before, this generation here has that right now mentality. They're not patient. And then you interject fear into that of the black man.
Mhm.
And that's how you go from showing up to shooting somebody in less than 2 seconds.
Right.
Because as they taught us, just being on the scene in uniform would deter 90% of the crimes.
Yeah.
Just being there. Because who wants to go to jail? I mean, if you're thinking about robbing somebody, and you see the police standing there looking at you, it's a very likely you're not going to do it.
Right.
So that's officer presence.
Yeah.
Okay. If the officer says don't do that, and if you're about to do it anyway, usually you're going to stop because you don't want to go to jail.
Right.
Now, if you ignore the verbal commands and he has to put his hands on you, you're probably going to jail. But at least he will have shown up. He would have verbalized something to you to give you a choice, which you chose to ignore. Now he's putting his hands on you. That's step 3.
Right.
Now, if y'all get into a battle and the police officer feel like he's gonna lose the battle, then he got stuff around his belt like pepper spray. He got a baton. He got other things at his disposal. If that's not working, or he fears for his life, and we'll get to that in a minute too, then that's when deadly force comes about.
Right.
None of that can happen in 2 seconds.
That's it. That's
So,
it.
so that's where sometimes I see these videotapes, like the kid that got shot in Chicago. Number one, I heard it in the officer's voice when he was screaming. I can tell somebody, drop your gun, keep your hands where I can see them. I can do all that in the same deflection, the same tone of voice.
Right.
I don't have to bark. When you start barking and you're talking real fast, you're scared.
Right.
And if you're scared, you do illogical things. You do things that's not prescribed in the book. Now, are there many other environmental factors that come into play? Of course they are.
Of course. Right.
The kid in Chicago, I told somebody, yeah, he got shot dead and he shouldn't. But one thing I have to go back to is, what was he doing out at 2:30 in the morning?
Right. That's what I said also.
Yeah, what he doing? Because see, if he was been at home, he'd have been alive.
Right.
Sometimes our kids put themselves in positions that causes anguish and causes bad things to happen. So you got to look at that environmental factor as well. Now, you already got a culture out there that don't like us and are scared of us.
Mm-hmm.
Then we put ourselves in that snare to where it makes it easy for them.
Right.
We got to do our part. We got to do our part.
Right. Like you said before, DJ, we got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yes.
We got to educate our kids. We got to get them to understand that this is not a game.
That's it.
Yes.
This is hunting season.
Right.
It is.
And if
And
you're running down an alley with a gun in your hand and you're going somewhere, I don't care if you throw the gun down, there's a good possibility you're going to get shot. Because all they saw is the gun in your hand.
You are going to get shot, because I'm going to tell you what happens. I'm going to tell you what happens. That adrenaline starts flowing so fast. And this is where you have to be careful about who you choose as police officers. When you interview people, we got to get away from this standardized questioning. You got to ask some hard questions. You got to ask how they feel about certain things. And that's one thing about my research on police retirement. I know what police retirement is. I know what being on active duty is. But has anybody asked officers, what does it feel like when you leave this fraternity and you go to being a regular person again? What does that feel like? And those are the type of questions that you got to start using when you interview some of these youngsters. Now, the other thing is the demographic of police officers in the 90s versus now, there's almost a 10 or 15 year, 20-year age difference. So those of us who used to use wisdom and thinking, and I used to call it the poker face, I can be scared that you're going to kick my butt too, but you're not going to be able to tell it from looking at my face and my tone of voice, because my coping mechanism has always been the Superman Clark Kent rule. Now, y'all talking to Greg right now. This is me every day. But when I put on that badge and that uniform, I turn into Superman.
Okay.
And I stay in the Superman mode until I get back home and take it off. Now, I've been in some hairy situations, and I can count many of them on my hands and toes. There's been a lot of them, but it was two things. It was two things that kept me safe. One, my belief in the Lord, because He protected me. But also, I had to use my brain and my dialect and my body posture, because, like I said before, body language is 98% of verb. Is 98% of the communications. Verbal is almost 2%, and you can tell if a person is scared. You can tell by the way he talk. I mean, when the kid got shot in Chicago, you could hear, "Put your hands up!" I mean, the officer was losing it. One, he'd already ran after this guy, and he was in an alley by himself in the dark. I don't necessarily blame the officer totally. The circumstances was just not right.
Yeah.
I mean, we're taught to shoot behind cover. When you're out there exposed, a lot of bad things can happen. A lot of bad things are going to happen.
Right.
Now, that doesn't explain some of these other ones that I'm looking at. I pulled an article yesterday. 109 black men and boys have been killed by police, and that's only the ones that's been documented.
Right.
And I'm thinking, wait a minute. All of these, is something wrong here. One, fear. Go ahead.
Mr. Greg, let me bring some because I want to bring up because you said about interviewing and how they select. I have a friend of mine. He was interviewing for the FBI. This is probably like 15 years ago. And I didn't know because we hadn't spoken in years in between, but it was a federal agent that came to my job and was looking for me. And I was scared, but he approached me. He said, "Hey man, you're not in trouble. I just want to talk to you about a guy that you may know." He said his name. I said, "Oh yeah." He said, "Yeah, I just want to talk to you about him, whatever." Met me at my house and he was interviewing me, asking me questions about things that we used to do when we were young. Like, did he do
Mhm.
this? Does he know any people? Like, does he know any people from foreign countries? Blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking about it, I said, I wonder if the law enforcement does their background such as that, like actually know people and get to know like the culture that they come from, how they reacted to situations, what they got into before they got into law enforcement. I think that would help a lot as well. Like if they do exactly how they do federal agents,
Absolutely, absolutely. And nobody does a better job of background screening than the FBI and the Department of Drug Enforcement, because you have an awful lot of assets that are placed at your disposal when you become a federal agent. But at the same time, some of these same background checks need to be done on a consistent basis in local law enforcement. But I can tell you one of the problems that they run into is money.
Money, right,
Lack of resources.
right.
Now, somewhere between, let's say, the late 90s, early 2000s, there was a decline in suitable candidates, you know. And as a result, many small departments had to hire who they could hire.
Okay.
Because they had to have bodies. And what that did was they had to drop their standards. I can remember talking to some younger officers, and they told me, well, we didn't even have to run when we was in the academy. I said, y'all had to do what? We had to run 5 miles every Wednesday. You know,
Wow.
you know, drug DWI, they took some of that out. Hostage negotiations, things that taught patience. And I guess that's where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
And then you take the fact that we started militarizing our police departments. So now you got a 24-year-old kid that's got an M4. He got a 45 mil, he got a 40 or 40 millimeter with probably 60, 70 rounds. He has a taser. You know, he got all this stuff on his belt, but he's a chicken. He's scary.
Right.
You know,
Right.
he doesn't know how to use the mouth and what's between his ears to de-escalate. He's from that right now generation.
Right.
So you see where I'm going with that?
Yeah.
You add all of this together and you end up with these bad things that I'm reading in this book. And it didn't just happen, but it's happening more and more now. And I hate to bring up, but yeah, I'm gonna bring him up. Our last president,
He encouraged
it's been there all the time, but they for some reason got real comfortable
Yes.
in verbalizing it and showing it outwardly. It used to be under the table. They used to talk about us behind our backs after we left the room, but now they got bold enough to say it to you in your face.
That's it.
Yeah.
And sadly enough, some of our youngsters don't know when to, like they say, when to play and when to fold.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes you have to live to fight another day.
That's right.
You know, I used to tell the kids all the time, and it was something I had to learn early in my law enforcement career, because when I came to Grambling, I wasn't, the kids here were like, they always looked at us as toy cops, and they used to call us that. And, you had to get thick skinned, and, you would stop them on traffic stop and they'd jump out there, man, what you stop me for?
Yeah.
And I had to learn real quickly that it wasn't personal. Some of these kids came from large metropolitan cities where this was happening to them all the time. And it wasn't a personal attack on me. It was the uniform that they were looking at. And they were vocalizing their frustrations with the uniform. So once I learned that, I was able to turn the tables and switch it around and use it to my advantage. I started learning people's names. I can remember one time, football team, they used to always tear up the cafeteria. They used to have fights all the time up in there, and people used to wonder, man, you 5'9" and at the time of maybe a little under 200 pounds, you'll run up in there. I said, yeah, because I know Gerald, and I called Gerald by his name, and Gerald will stop turning tables over.
Right.
That's my point. That's my point right there. Is
Yeah,
that relationships?
relationships.
Like I was talking to my mom about this, and as far as like, because here in Birmingham, our black police chief, who when he got the job, he said the first thing that he was doing was he was getting cops out of their cars and making them walk the beat.
Yes,
He
yes,
says when you walk that neighborhood and you are forced to know these people and have these relationships, because then you'll know that Reggie down the street, when he goes berserk, it's not because he's doped up. He's not a threat to anybody. He deals with mental health issues. He's autistic, or these things. So
Mhm.
how you handle the situation will be totally different.
Right.
Or we can say, hey, let me get Miss Mary because she knows how to calm him down. Y'all back up. He's all right. He's not gonna hurt nobody. He having an episode. We don't have these. It's like I say, yeah, it's just about those relationships. Get out, talk to these people. I always say, don't look at us as just numbers or possible criminals, or we're human beings, and we might be able to help you one day because you're going to want answers about stuff that goes on in the neighborhood, and you want answers
Man.
from us. But you can, and I used to hear this a lot too when they say, well, God, they're not talking to us, but they want the neighborhoods clean up, but they won't say anything. I said, well, how about the blue code of silence? We get the same thing from you guys. That when you
Mhm.
mess up, nobody speaks up or nobody calls them out. So it's just
Right.
constant distrust and this disconnection. And that's why I said, I will encourage the youth to join, because we need more representation, just like we need representation in government. We
Right.
need representation behind that badge as well,
Right.
and
Right.
understand how things work on this side of the street or on this side of the interstate, and then you also have that dialogue with police within your unit. So if they have to come over, they understand it, they have a better
Absolutely.
idea.
Absolutely. And you said the key word relationships, because in my certification as a crime prevention specialist, community policing was key. And it goes back to something I said before about police departments needing to diversify more, to the point that you look at your demographics. You shouldn't have an Asian police officer over here in the Hispanic neighborhood. That's not going to work out.
Mm-mm.
Just like you shouldn't have a black officer over in a racist white neighborhood. It's going to be a problem.
That's it.
And so when you, as a police administrator, or these are things that you have to definitely keep in mind. But community policing, some kind of way, got shoved up under the rug, and I think it goes back to a lot of environmental factors. I tried to pull up this article, and I forgot. Yeah, I think it was in Las Vegas. I think I can't remember exactly when it was, but it was a bank robbery, and I think it was about 4 suspects. And when the Las Vegas Police Department got there, these guys were suited down in armor. They had automatic weapons, and they basically just gave it to the police department. And it was from that particular incident that the federal government started shipping Army surplus items to the police department so they wouldn't be so outgunned.
Okay.
That the premise behind that was fine, but you got to be careful about who you put who you put a gun in whose hands. And that's where we're failing right now. It's not because of the equipment that's being given, it's who's using it.
That's right.
And that's where we got to do a better job there. We got to do a better job. The friends and family plan got to go out the door,
Right.
And in the judicial system, we have some issues there as well. that's gonna have to be addressed. Qualified immunity. I'm on the border on that one, but qualified immunity gives an officer too much latitude when it comes to wrongdoing.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you go out and shoot someone, they put you on administrative leave. You get paid sitting at home with your feet up, and then the prosecutor and attorney comes to you, or the DA comes to you and says, "This is how I want you to write your report." You make sure you put in there these words: "I feared for my life."
Right.
Now, what that does, that's the catch-all.
Mm-hmm.
That's the catch-all to keep you from going to jail and losing your pension.
Mm-hmm.
Now, did Derek Chauvin fear for his life? You could not have. My body language that I saw was you had your hands in your pocket.
Right.
That's what I saw.
You was kneeling on a rock.
Mm-hmm.
You was kneeling on a rock. So no, you were not fearful of your life.
Right.
But that's what the attorneys tell the police officers to write in their report. I fear for my life. And what happens, this goes a little too far, and you take a 5'8" white boy, and he's dealing with a football player that's maybe 6'4", 300 pounds. I mean, the likelihood of that black guy getting shot is 85%,
Yeah.
or maybe even higher, because of the fear.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like I said before, if you go through that force continuum, you being on the job, I mean, you being on the scene, but you looking up at this dude, he almost blocking out the sun. and what comes out of your mouth is filled with fear.
Right.
You know, you can't speak forcefully. And now you down to your last three options. You know.
Yeah.
So
because you don't want to say, hey brother, how you doing? You know, it just get like a little dialogue going before, instead of going up with your chest poked out, like, hey brother, hey, can I talk to you for a second?
That's all it takes.
Yeah.
That's what community policing teaches. Like you said, if I know that Miss Mona gonna tell me everything I need to know about what's going on down the street, Miss Mona gonna be my friend. Miss Mona gonna tell me, no, that boy ain't nothing wrong with him. He just, he didn't take his meds today. That means I don't need to shoot him. I need to get him to the hospital.
That's right.
I need to get him to the hospital. As a criminal investigator, 98% of the crimes that I solved was because I had made relationships out there in the community, and I could get on the phone. Hey, man, what you know about that burglary that took place down there on the street? Oh, man, give me a minute. I'll get back with you. And normally they do.
Yeah.
Now, they call it CI management, confidential informant and management. And they confidential informants come about two different ways.
Yeah.
One, when you have a small fry and you're doing a narcotics investigation, you might have a crackhead or you might have a meth head. What good is to put him in jail?
Right.
What are you going to do? You putting more burden on the system, no burden on the state. It's the supply I want. It's not the demand that I want.
Right.
I'm trying to get the supply off the street.
Yeah.
So that meth head or that crackhead, if I find him with something in his pocket, hey man, look, you come see me tomorrow. And if you don't, guess what? I'm gonna come get you.
Yeah.
And we develop a relationship. And then you have those that want to do something about their community, and they'll come and tell you things.
Yeah.
Now, that population is dwindling. It's dwindling because we have so many of our youngsters out here toting guns and shooting up each other that our elders are fearful to be able to want to come forward and do things like, look, we need to do something about this little group down here, down the street. All they doing is out there smoking dope. I done heard a couple of gunshots. You know, you're playing with guns. Our grandfathers and grandmamas used to just go down there to the spot where everybody was hanging out with a switch and a belt in their hands.
Right. Can't do that anymore.
You can't do that no more because you may not leave.
That's
but,
right.
Yeah.
But that's where we lost out some of our youth. And it's sad because I was just in the barbershop yesterday. Another kid got killed in Ruston yesterday. Gunplay. I hadn't got all of the details yet, but we're losing our youth because we don't have enough people out there talking to them. Now, my wish, just like we have in this podcast, I wish I could go into every little venue and sit down and have a round table discussion with all of the brothers that I could put together, age 15 to 25.
Right.
And say, hey, let's talk.
Yeah.
Tell me what's bothering y'all. And then we'll talk about what's bothering us and see if we can find some common ground.
Right.
Yeah. Just like when we want the police to communicate and have a relationship with us, we have to do it amongst each other as well. And
it starts at home.
Yeah, and that helps with keep holding each other accountable. That helps with also, senseless fights or shootings that could go from, just be like, hey man, you know what? Out of respect for your mother, I ain't gonna hurt you.
There you go.
I know your mother. I love your mother. And I'm not gonna do that to her. But boy, hey, don't say nothing else to me. We go. You keep my name out your mouth. I keep my name out your mouth. Out my mouth. We're going about our separate ways. Versus just, it's just not having those. We're so disconnected from each other.
Brother, like I said before, it's white and black. That right now mentality. There's no patience. If you had patience, there would be more talk before you reach and pull out a gun.
That's right.
We haven't learned how. We don't know how to do conflict resolution any longer. It's we used to fight all the time when I was growing up in high school. Nobody had no gun. We'd fight today, and tomorrow we'd be drinking colas together. I mean, it's just that's what it is. But now it's something, I don't know what it is. If it's in the water, I don't know what it is. But I will say this, and I hate to go here on, because I believe it or not, I'm 64, about to be 65 years old. I still love rap music. Okay. But
that's all right.
But I had to say this to make a point. Many of our rappers today talk about violence, talking about shooting each other, talking about all this. And remember I said before, media plays an important part on how you feel about yourself and how you feel about others. Right. Now, these rappers have made billions of dollars off our teens. And where do their kids go to school? Not in public school. They go to private school.
That's right.
That's right.
So it's like an exploitation that we're doing to our own people. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't have a problem with the rap, but at the same time, I need to see them rappers out here at the churches, at the community centers, talking to these kids like, hey man, look, this is just a song.
Yeah.
This is just a song. This is not real life.
That's right.
But they don't do that. Yeah. And as a result, we end up with people believing that the only way I can be popular, I got to be bad. Because that's what the girls like.
Mm-hmm.
And we try to impress the girls. And the funeral home getting rich every day.
That's right.
I mean,
Yep. Between
oh
the
my
killings and
God.
the pandemic, yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I saw something during the pandemic. I know I'm old, but I didn't think I'd ever see this. When you would drive by the funeral home and look in a picture window
Yeah.
and see
Yeah.
that blew me away when they said, "Well, this is the viewing now. You can't come in the building. You got to
Yeah.
drive by."
Do a
And
drive-by.
I'm
Right.
like, "What?
What? I know.
Yeah.
Oh my
But
God! Oh my God!"
Greg, I want to
Yes.
ask you something.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of situations. We talked about mental health a little bit, and some situations where the person is not that they're on drugs or anything like that. Like you said, they haven't taken their meds or whatever.
Mhm.
You think it's a way that maybe the police department could have a mental health person on staff, or a way for the police to, some kind of way get someone that deals with mental health to help them deal with situations like that?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, you'd be surprised there are police departments that do. It's just
Okay.
that they don't utilize them as the way they should. My last 10 years, believe it or not, was at Conway Hospital in Monroe. And our primary function was, like I say, to preserve life and property. But our main function was to deal with violent psych patients. So when police departments would bring them into the intake area, we had to, I call it babysit, until they got them into a secure facility. So, and some of us have had sensitivity training, and it was supposed to have been on the forefront of a lot of police departments, but just like community policing, it was like, oh, big rah 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 and fireworks for about 5 minutes, and
Right.
then it just dies down, and you go back to what you've been doing.
Yeah.
And it's going to take lawmakers, it's going to take community leaders coming together and talking about it, just like we're talking about it today, and bringing about that awareness, that a person that is having a mental episode may be dangerous, but they don't need to be dead.
That's it.
Right.
Once again, you're gonna have, and it's hard for me not to keep going here, but I got to. There are some videos out there where I have seen white dudes run at police officers with knives in their hands.
Right.
And the police officer retreats, and they continue to talk, and they continue to talk, and continue to talk, and continue to talk until they de-escalate the situation.
Right.
But when it comes to us, for some reason,
Yeah.
10 minutes, that's it. Boom, boom,
Yeah.
boom. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
And once it's the culture. Once again, it's the culture. We're not viewed as human. We're not viewed as people that need help. I think about the guy that shot all those people in Las Vegas a few years ago, and they came up with all kind of things. Well, he was having a bad day and so on and so forth. But when it comes to us, they got to bring up our drug history.
Right.
We got arrested last week for this. We got arrested last week for that.
Right.
And so once again, the culture has to change before many of these other things will change. How we're looked upon. It didn't take the United States long to put out that anti-Asian bill.
Exactly.
Because they were getting beat down in the streets because of COVID. But
I was so upset when I saw that, Mr. Greg. I'm not gonna lie to you. I had to do some woo-saws. I had to go in the corner and sit and be still. I was cussing. I was raving. I was like, maybe a year and a half, an executive order for protection for them passes through.
Yeah.
But we've been ducking and dodging and running and getting beat, from behind, getting shot from behind for how long? For centuries.
Right.
Centuries.
And we still consider 3/5 of a person.
That's it.
3/5 of a person. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. You know, and you know, it's easy to ask the question, when is it going to stop? You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
is it going to require Jesus coming back? I mean, honestly, I mean, because this is happening almost every single day, every day,
Yeah.
every day. I remember seeing something that Dick Gregory said, and I can't quote him because, you know, Dick Gregory cusses. He cusses real
yeah.
bad. And he said something about, y'all want to stop these police involved shootings? He said, you got to hit them in their pockets. He said, you take that pension away, you know, which is protected under that qualified immunity. And he said, a lot of this stuff will stop. He said, he said, unless you hate me more than you love your family. But he said it with some expletives in there, so I can't. I don't want to.
Right.
But he said, you want to know how to stop police shootings? There you go. There's your answer. And I said, well, wow, you know what? That's kind of powerful.
Yeah.
You know, that's powerful.
Yeah.
You know, it brings me back to, you know, I got in trouble on Facebook about this, but I want to read this. And it has to do with what we were talking about, how things change from generation to generation. It was this guy, they called him the founder of Dubai. And they asked him about the future of his country. And he said, my grandfather rode a camel. My father rode a camel. I ride a Mercedes. My son rides a Land Rover. And my grandson is going to ride a Land Rover. But my great grandson is going to have to ride a camel again. And they asked why. He said, because hard times create strong men. Strong men create easy times. Easy times create weak men. And weak men create difficult times. And I was like, oh my God, there it is in a nutshell.
That's it. That's it. That's it.
Deep.
That was very deep.
And that, I think that's why we are where we are right now.
Yeah.
Not just on the Black perspective, but overall. Because we want to make it better for our kids, and at the same time, we want them to be responsible adults and be contributors to society. But there's a thin line there where you know, between spoiling someone and giving them too much to where they don't appreciation. Yeah. You know.
Yeah.
You know, like I said, many people don't understand that we got to continue to raise warriors, not parasites.
That's right.
And that's what happens when, like I said, when difficult times are made into easy times by us trying to pave the way. Right. We can continue to pave the way, but we got to do it in such a way that our younger generation understands. And right now they don't understand. They don't understand. They don't understand the importance of a fist fight.
Right.
They don't understand the importance of a fist fight. You get a chance to live tomorrow and talk about where I kicked his butt or he kicked my butt.
Yeah.
And be able to come back for another fight if needed.
Right. But if my idea of conflict resolution is throwing a bullet that I can't take back once it leaves that muzzle, you don't get a chance to do that over. You don't get a do-over.
That's right.
And the other sad part to that too is that, and I don't condone gun violence at all. But what makes it even more sad is when you read these headlines of kids getting hit, and it wasn't even meant for them. But these young boys, they can't fight, but makes it worse. They get a gun and they can't even shoot.
They can't even shoot. Right. They just throw bullets everywhere.
They hitting any and everybody. They ain't got nothing to do with it. People inside their homes, babies in the bed, sleep. Mama's waking up in the morning and that baby been gone. You know, from these drive-by senseless shooting, stray bullets going everywhere. You know, so it's, you know, but like I said, you know, we got work to do. We got work to do, but we got to be able to walk and chew bubblegum at the same time as deal with our issues, as well as dealing with people outside of our culture, our community, and hold them accountable as well. It can't be one thing at a time. You know,
no, it cannot. We are too far past one thing at a time. This thing gonna have to be done on a multiple platform, because if you don't, while you over here working on this thing over here going awry. You know,
that's right.
It's almost like trying to put out fires. You know, like the California fires. You know, if they come straight over here and the wind starts blowing left, then you got a problem over here, and you run out of manpower. And so it's got to be attacked from multiple points at this simultaneously. Otherwise, we just spinning our wheels. And you know, I'm available for anything. I've you know put myself out there where I would love to be able to have public forums, because it's a lot of other brothers that I notice in law enforcement that feel the same way that I do. I know some fathers that feel the same way that I do. And like our faith-based community, they're going to have to do a better job of stepping up.
They got to step up
as well, you know, because a lot of people listen to them, you know, and we need them. We need them desperately, but we also need every other able-bodied man to step up, and we got to recapture our youth, because if we don't, just like I tell somebody in Grambling, after a while, I'm gonna be the oldest person in Grambling if we don't stop some of this foolishness.
That's right.
You know, because we got the generation in front of me who are barely hanging on, and I'm not saying that in a derogatory manner whatsoever. You know, they've lived their lives, and you know, and they're comfortable and they're doing their thing. And then you got little bitty babies. And everybody in between the age of 15 and 23 killing each other. So that means it's we're gonna have a gap there at some point.
That's right.
You know, ain't gonna be nobody here to take care of me when I need to go to the nursing home. Where we going? You know.
Give me the information. I'll take care of you, Mr. Craig.
All right, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it.
Well, Greg, thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a pleasure. I really I want to have you back. I want to have you back.
Sure.
We'll work that out for the best scheduled time, because I really love your insight. I love your honesty, and this is a conversation that you know needs to be had on this level all the way up to a larger scale, because yes, all policemen are not what we're seeing right now, and I think that's why it's so important that we give those platforms to those police officers if they feel comfortable enough to speak and say their piece as well, because
they're true.
You know, you just like how we don't want, you know, like what's going on in Chicago or what's going on in, you know, certain neighborhoods to represent our whole community. You know, I know you guys don't want Derek Chauvin and et cetera to represent your community or represent that badge as a whole, you know. It's very important.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
go ahead.
It's like a toothache. It's like a bad tooth in your mouth. Okay.
Yeah.
For the most part, your grill is good. It's functional. It's doing what it's supposed to do. Now, but you can have one cavity. One cavity can cause you pain and discomfort for a lifetime.
That's right.
Now you can get rid of that. You can get rid of that bad tooth either by filling or extraction. But if you haven't addressed the root cause of that cavity, guess what? You're gonna get another one. You'll get another one.
That's right.
So that's it right there.
Very good analogy. Yes.
Greg, Mr. Greg, I know you for about 5 minutes. I love you already. I love you already. I got.
I'm always available, bro. I'm always available.
All right, but this concludes this episode of Enough for Truth. But one more word from our sponsors before we get out of here. Yo, what's up? Subscribe, like, and share this video. If you don't like it, share it anyway. Like it and subscribe. Appreciate it. All right. God bless you all. Be safe. And till next time.
All right.
All
Love
right,
you,
until
Greg.
next time.
Thanks.
Love you too, sister. Y'all take care. And tell my boy I'm rooting for him. He better not leave me up here by myself.
Okay.
All right. See y'all later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.